The world awoke to news of a major U.S.-Israeli military operation targeting Iran. In a coordinated strike, advanced air and missile attacks hit multiple Iranian sites, focusing on military and nuclear facilities. Official statements from Jerusalem and Washington confirmed the operation, marking a dramatic escalation after months of rising tensions and failed diplomacy. Images of explosions over Iranian cities flooded global media, signaling the scale and precision of the assault. Stock markets reacted instantly. Oil prices surged, and world leaders called for de-escalation as the region entered a volatile new chapter. The immediate questions: how extensive is the damage? What are the casualties? And what will Iran do next? The world is watching, bracing for Iran's response and the next move in this high-stakes conflict. At the heart of this crisis are the US, Israel, and Iran, each led by figures with starkly opposing visions for the Middle East. Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu, long a vocal critic of Iran, sees this operation as the culmination of years of warnings. US President Donald Trump, in his second term, authorized the strike, reinforcing his tough stance on Iran and his close alliance with Netanyahu. Iran's leadership, led by the Supreme Leader, has responded with fury, framing the attack as a violation of sovereignty and a challenge to their regional power. The international community, including the EU, Russia, and China, now faces pressure to respond, caught between calls for diplomacy and the reality of military action. Gulf Arab states watch anxiously, wary of escalation, but also of Iran's growing influence. The world's major powers are now forced to choose sides or attempt to mediate, as the region's fate hangs in the balance. This is not just a regional dispute, it's a global crisis with far-reaching implications. The stage is set for a confrontation that could reshape alliances and redraw the map of the Middle East. Prime Minister Netanyahu justified the attack as a last resort, citing intelligence that Iran was on the brink of a nuclear breakthrough. He argued that all diplomatic options had failed, and immediate action was necessary to prevent an existential threat to Israel. The U.S. echoed this, framing the strike as essential for both Israeli security and broader regional stability, citing Iran's nuclear ambitions and support for proxy militias. Both leaders presented the operation as a preemptive move to stop a looming catastrophe, insisting that waiting any longer would have been too dangerous. Netanyahu also addressed the Iranian people, claiming the strikes targeted the regime, not civilians, and expressing hope for a freer future for Iran. The urgency of the intelligence was emphasized by both governments, making the case for preemption over diplomacy. This timing marks a decisive shift from rhetoric to action, with leaders betting that boldness now will prevent disaster later. The world must now grapple with the consequences of this calculated gamble. Tehran's response was immediate and defiant. Iranian officials condemned the strikes as acts of war and promised crushing retaliation, vowing not to let the attack go unanswered. The regime framed the assault as an attack on national dignity, rallying citizens around the flag and calling for unity. Iran's options for response are many direct missile strikes, proxy attacks across the region, or cyber warfare targeting critical infrastructure. The ambiguity of Iran's threats keeps the US and Israel on high alert, forcing them to prepare for retaliation on multiple fronts. Domestically, the government uses the crisis to strengthen its grip, channeling public anger against external enemies. The world is left guessing when and how Iran will strike back. The stakes have never been higher, as the cycle of action and reaction threatens to spiral out of control. In Tehran, the night erupted in chaos as explosions shattered the calm, sending residents scrambling for safety. Emergency services were overwhelmed, daily life ground to a halt, and fear gripped the city as people sheltered indoors. Though the strikes targeted military sites, the proximity to civilian areas caused widespread disruption. Schools closed, transport halted, and uncertainty reigned. The psychological toll is immense. Families huddle together, glued to news reports, fearing for loved ones in the future. For many Iranians, war is no longer an abstract threat, but a terrifying reality. The economic fallout is immediate. Shortages loom, infrastructure is strained, and survival becomes a daily struggle. Foreign assurances that civilians aren't targets offer little comfort to those caught in the crossfire. The true cost of this conflict is measured not just in damage, but in fear, trauma, and shattered lives. On the streets of Tehran, the crisis is deeply personal, defined by anxiety, loss, and a desperate hope for peace. For Israel, a nuclear-armed Iran is not just a strategic threat, it's an existential one. The memory of past persecution and the Holocaust shapes Israeli policy, making the promise of never again a core national doctrine. Iranian calls for Israel's destruction are taken literally, and the prospect of a nuclear Iran is seen as a red line that cannot be crossed. Israeli leaders believe even the threat of a nuclear weapon could destroy their country or force dangerous concessions. This fear drives Israel's willingness to act militarily, seeing the risks of war as less than the risks of inaction. The existential threat narrative transforms the strike from aggression to self-preservation in the eyes of many Israelis. The spotlight now falls on Netanyahu and Trump, whose partnership made this operation possible. For Netanyahu, this is the defining act of his career, a move from warnings to decisive action against Israel's greatest perceived threat. Trump's decision reflects his America-first approach, skeptical of diplomacy but willing to use force to protect U.S. interests and allies. Their leadership styles, bold, polarizing, and often unilateral, enabled a level of coordination rarely seen before. Supporters hail them as strong leaders. Critics warn of recklessness and the dangers of bypassing diplomacy. The political stakes are enormous. Success could cement their legacies, while failure could bring disaster at home and abroad. The world now judges their gamble as events unfold. The future is uncertain and dangerous. Iran's promised retaliation could mean direct missile strikes, proxy attacks, or cyber warfare, any of which could ignite a wider regional war. Economic fallout is already global. Oil prices are up, markets are volatile, and supply chains are threatened. Diplomatically, the UN is paralyzed, with major powers divided and alliances under strain. The fragile framework of international law is at risk, as nations are forced to take sides or navigate a perilous middle ground. A prolonged conflict could redraw the Middle East, trigger humanitarian crises, and even accelerate Iran's nuclear ambitions. Every path forward is fraught with peril, and the ripple effects will be felt for years. The world stands on the edge, waiting for the next move. This conflict matters to everyone because the Middle East is a global crossroads. Its instability affects energy, markets, and security worldwide. A major war here could disrupt economies, raise prices, and trigger refugee crises that reach far beyond the region. The principles of international law and diplomacy are at stake. A preemptive strike of this scale sets a dangerous precedent. The risk of nuclear proliferation grows as nations may seek weapons to deter future attacks. Human suffering will not be contained by borders. Millions could be displaced, and humanitarian needs will soar. The choices made now could either pull the world back from the brink or push it closer to catastrophe. This is not just a regional crisis. It's a test of the global order. That's why the world is watching, and why this moment matters to us all.